Hey everyone, my name is Shelly. Today, I want to talk about the one number that decides if your growth plan actually works. And this number is probably not exactly what you're thinking, but it's one that we love to bring up to clients. They don't always love to see, but it paints a really, really good picture of exactly what's going on with your growth plan and if we should be pivoting or whether we should be doubling down. So, hi, like I said, I'm Shelly Hughes. This is Unearth with Shelly Hughes. In this podcast, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a profitable, passionate business. And all the case studies that we talk about today in every single episode come directly from our clients that we've worked with for many, many years, especially if you're middle market, even if you're small business. These are all going to really, really resonate. We usually work with COOs or directors of operation or VP marketing, things like that, sometimes CEOs. And whenever my team sits down with a director of ops, we ask the question, what did your last new client actually cost you to land? And most people, honestly, they can answer relatively quickly, or they can bring up the information relatively quickly and a number pops out. But usually it's a very specific marketing number. So cost per lead, their digital agency tells them what their cost per lead is, and that's what they go off of. Or cost per click, or something they can pull up on a dashboard, right? That their digital marketing firm gave them. So then my team typically asks a follow-up question. Does that number include the sales time that it took to close and the service and warranty calls that got absorbed before the contract was even signed, or the time that you had to talk to all these different lawyers to get that contract absolutely right, or the 3 deals that looked exactly like this one but never actually closed? And that's usually where it gets quiet. So today, I want to go over the real cost of a client and help you be able to calculate it. And maybe in a separate video, I'll do kind of a whiteboard session on really trying to calculate something like this and why not knowing is quietly making your growth decisions for you. So this is part of the Growth Engine series. This is episode 3 of our Growth Engine series. The last episode was you don't have a growth system, you have a person with a Rolodex. That's what the episode was. And that was a pretty interesting episode with this very similar underlying issue where growth isn't actually being tracked. This time in dollars, where last time we talked about not tracked in terms of people. Let's go over the number everyone thinks that they know. And it's funny, if you can't answer, and my team just talked about this relatively recently, if you can't answer what it actually costs to land a client from the big picture, not just the microscopic picture, every growth decision after that is a guess dressed up as a strategy. And so that's a big thing that we really push as a framework when we work with clients, because I think it's really easy to just pull from what your digital marketing team says. But looking at it from a large perspective is really going to help you understand not just your gross margin, but what is your customer acquisition cost to the finite amount, and really talking to your bookkeeper and your accountant so you can pull this information up rather quickly. So obviously, the lower that is, the better it's going to be. So if you haven't guessed, customer acquisition cost is the number that we're going to talk about today that shows if your growth strategy actually works. So let's talk about the number everyone thinks that they know. You ask most leaders what a client costs to acquire, and they'll probably give you that marketing number, like I said. And that number is real, but it is not the number that we're really talking about. It's not all encompassing to what we need to discuss today. The real cost includes sales time, especially like I said in the last episode, if the sales is based on 1 or 2 people and it's really concentrated, kind of like what we talked about last week. It includes admin, it includes quoting, it includes service overhead absorbed before the contract is ever even signed. I mean, I can't tell you how many discovery meetings and tips and things I did early on in starting the business just to show people the value of what we can give when I was just giving away free info, right? So all of that includes every deal that looked exactly like this one and didn't close. Those hours were 100% spent too. It includes onboarding costs before the client is actually profitable, not just signed. And most companies can tell you the revenue down to the dollar. But in our mind, I know we're a revenue growth firm, but revenue truly is a vanity metric. We look at healthy revenue. And this is where a lot of times we can see profit decline when there is little accountability in the sales perspective. We've seen that before, and I can go into that a little bit. But almost no one can tell you what the true cost of producing the revenue is if we don't look at some of these numbers. So we're going to get into it. So let's talk about why this number a lot of times stays hidden. It's not a failure of the team by any means. It's genuinely a really hard number to calculate, because when growth runs on relationships and effort instead of tracked channels, or both, which is exactly what that invisible pipeline problem we talked about from a few weeks ago, we see that revenue is growing, but nobody stops to ask what's costing to produce the growth. Also, if you're dealing with an admin person and they're not just a sales admin, maybe they're the executive assistant to the CEO, and they do a couple different roles, and you kind of have to weigh like, how much time are they taking in sales versus these other things, administrative overhead costs. You kind of have to do those calculations of like, okay, 1/3 of their time is committed to sales. You got to take that into consideration. Even if you're the CEO and you do, many CEOs are involved in sales in some way, shape, or form. You got to take whatever time that you commit to sales every month and take your salary and use that percentage in this equation. So it's a really challenging number, especially when we're talking about time to calculate. It doesn't always just come up in your P&L. We see this a lot of times because revenue is growing, but no one stopped to ask what's costing to produce the growth. And that's really how you look at healthy revenue. Growing revenue has a way of silencing the instinct to kind of check the cost that's behind it, because everyone is happy with this vanity metric, right? And the number is always calculable, like I said. It's just never urgent enough many times to stop and calculate it. Our middle market clients, they love calculating this number, but our small business clients that, we don't serve all the time anymore. That's not really, it's probably for this exact reason. They don't want to calculate something like this. Like, it's boring to them. Like, they want to know top line, they want to know bottom line, and that's about it. But I think when we work with some more sophisticated clients, which is what I'm trying to articulate to you, like, how can you become more sophisticated in your business? This is absolutely a number that they love to track on a monthly basis, not just a yearly basis, right? Because then what is the goal? The goal is to lower that number. If you can lower your CAC or your client acquisition cost, then your bottom line is going to get just even more healthy. It shows up as a very specific kind of blindness for a COO, and why the moment of not knowledge gets really expensive. Because you can't evaluate whether a new channel or a new hire or a new campaign is actually worth it, because there's no real baseline to calculate it against. So if you don't understand what your baseline CAC is, then when you add something experimental, it's really hard to see what that difference is from a holistic perspective. You can very much see it from a digital perspective, but there's so many elements to that might not be telling you the real story. Resource allocation decisions turn into guesses, really honestly dressed up as strategy, because do you hire another salesperson? Do you spend more here? Do you spend more there? There's really no way for sure, unless you really line item out every single thing so you can see what is contributing the most to your marketing budget, what is contributing the most to your sales budget. And then if you change something here or there, you're able to track it to a specific line item that is going to change that CAC. So being able to track this every single month is a really, really great way for you to understand the health of your growth strategy. Again, especially from a digital marketing perspective, the leads that look the cheapest on a dashboard or sometimes the most expensive clients once you count the service and support they actually require. It's all about acquisition, right? And we have this challenge all the time with clients where they might come to us and say, hey, we have a retention issue, or like, our clients suck, or whatever. And we say, okay, is it a retention issue or is it an acquisition issue? Were these people ever going to be happy in the first place? If the answer is probably no, then it's an acquisition issue, not a retention issue. If you brought, and maybe they were so desperate that they just said yes right away, but the actual cost of serving them and onboarding them is really expensive. And that's not exactly going to be part of this calculation specifically, but it's definitely something to keep in mind of how are profits being diminished by crappy clients. And the most dangerous version of this is, it looks fine, everything looks fine on a revenue report, while the actual profitability of how you're getting that revenue is really quietly eroding underneath it. For example, I was just talking to a colleague of mine, and he was closing a deal. They brought in this lead. It was a legal firm or something like that, or some kind of legal committee or something. And he had to spend so much time in the contract phase of closing this deal because he had to basically get the okay of 8 separate lawyers. And this contract was redlined by 8 different people who their entire job is to just say no to things and argue, right? So understanding and really looking at this information and looking at what are the clients and what clients took the longest to land, it gives you so much data on not just the channels that you're looking at, but who you even give 2 thoughts to, right? He's like, I'm never going to do that again because one of my good friends is a lawyer and she's delightful. I have another good friend, M&A lawyer, Laura DiFrancesco. She's incredible. Go find her. She's amazing. I have another employee, plaintiff lawyer who supports the employee. His name is Jacob Jager. He's incredible. He's over in New Jersey. I have another incredible lawyer. Her name is Jen Ward. She's over at Ward Law, LLC. She is on the defense side for the employer. So kind of an employee is Jacob, employer, defense is Jen. So I have lots of lawyers. I love them. Do I want them to be my client? That's okay. Love you. Let's keep supporting each other. Anyway, so the point of this is building the system to actually know. And this isn't about building this elaborate finance model, right? It's about answering one question honestly, on purpose, and on schedule, and repeatedly so that you can see different kinds of trends. So I like to start with diagnosis. Start with the last 3 months. Look at how much in every single month and work backward. Let's start from a marketing perspective, right? How much did you spend on people in marketing? Software, subscriptions, LinkedIn Premium, anything, obviously digital ads, admin, anything real dollars spent plus time spent on a marketing perspective. Then you can look at industry standards. So consumer packaged goods, they spend about 19% of their top line revenue on marketing efforts. Finance is about 12%. Healthcare is about 10%. Manufacturing about 7%. Then compare to where you are compared to your industry. And are you spending too little or are you spending way too much? Honestly, what I find is, especially clients with great growth stories, they're spending way too little. Then you can do the same with sales. So look at people, look at memberships and associations. If you use any type of meeting thing like Zoom or Fireflies or Loom or anything like that, a lot of times we used to send Loom videos to explain proposals. If you do any trade shows or if you, send a bottle of Dom Perignon when a client, signs, or if you bring clients to the Phillies game, put that on. All those things that align with sales, put those in the sales section. Then, and I'll do this in another video because I don't think we have time here. So basically add those 2 numbers up. You can average them out over 3 months. And of course, if you pay for a big, membership in February, take that and divide it by 12 and add that in there too, right? So if you paid that in February and you're just doing September, October, November, that number still counts. So, bring in some of those big numbers and divide by 12 and add it in there. Add those 2 up of what you spend in marketing and really how that relates to industry. And then what you spend in sales. And then you can calculate your cost per acquisition based on your revenue for those months. And it's really important to break it down by source. If you do a cost per client, that's a little bit trickier, right? So I like to start by doing it just by month. What was your revenue for the month and what did you spend, right? Is it the most accurate number in the world? No. You have to get a little bit more sophisticated if you do it per client. You have to make sure that you're tracking the right numbers, which a lot of people aren't tracking. The salesperson isn't always tracking that they're doing a sales call for this exact client. But cost per client varies wildly depending on where they actually come from, which sets up exactly what we're going to be covering in the next step of this series. And like I said, this can't be a one-time exercise. This has to be ongoing tracking, because the entire goal is to understand what you want to double down on, what's taking up the most of your budget, understanding if it's worth taking up the most of your budget, and trying to figure out how you can lower that CAC so that you lower your bottom line or you increase your bottom line. And it's precisely the kind of number or retainer partner of ours really keeps current. We help them keep that current. Next week, I just want to let you know, we are going to talk about where your best business is actually coming from. And we're doing this for a client right now. We use this tool called the Source of Good Business. It's a really amazing tool because the source matters just as much as the cost. So next week, we're going to be talking about that. But I want to land here and say, the number is never impossible to find. It might take a little bit of work. It's just never worth not finding it if things seem like they're working. It's the difference between deciding on purpose and really kind of doing this guessing with confidence thing that many, many people do when they're trying to decide what new marketing strategy to do or if they should do a new marketing strategy. And this is exactly what that series is for. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was good. We're talking about cost per acquisition or customer acquisition costs today. And it's more than just digital for sure, especially from a B2B perspective. There's so much sales time that goes into it. It's really important to look at the whole picture. So if you like this episode, please send it to a friend. Please follow, please subscribe, all the things, because it helps get info like this into more earbuds, specifically in those that are kind of in charge of operations, COO roles that really should be thinking about these on a consistent level. And we'll see you next week.